Hello, welcome to this update. Let's see just a quick thing for the severe weather, what's happening. So we have this marginal risk today in parts of northern Texas and Oklahoma. So there's a 2% tornado threat, a very small area in northern Texas there. So be aware this afternoon, a big wind threat and hail threat as well. So let's see, isolated strong severe storms may impact parts of Texas, South Plains, and Oklahoma Panhandle vicinity this evening. Possibility accompanied by a risk of hail and gusty winds and the 2% tornado. So be careful there today. Tomorrow in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, we have a marginal, a 2% tornado threat throughout Louisiana, Mississippi, and southern Alabama. Wind 5% there, and hail less than 5% in all areas. And we also have a marginal in parts of Northern California and Washington and Oregon there tomorrow. So not tornado, no hail, just wind, 5% wind there, the northwest. So let's see, a marginal tornado wind threat appears apparent Wednesday afternoon to Wednesday night across parts of central Gulf Coast states. Thunderstorms locally severe wind gusts also possible immediate coastal Washington, Oregon, Northern California. So be aware tomorrow, those areas. Day 3, just some general risk of storms there. So be aware. Fire threat is elevated in Southern California still, near Santa Barbara and Los Angeles today, and in the northeast from um, New Jersey, parts of New York, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, Rhode Island, and southern New Hampshire and Vermont. So be aware there, and dry conditions and gusty winds, especially the gusty winds and low relative humidity. So be aware there. And tomorrow, again, elevating the mid-Atlantic part to the northeast. So be aware there. So let's see here the her for like the storms today shows here here. So the show today there those storms in northern Texas there. So like the show later this evening especially shows some storms in northern Texas, maybe Oklahoma, very late this afternoon, but shows more this evening and tonight. Northern Texas there. It shows a front later in Kansas there, and by tomorrow morning shows some more storms in Kansas and more rain for parts of Iowa, southern eastern Oklahoma, some storms, and more rain from Missouri and Iowa and more areas tomorrow Wednesday. Shows more rain to in Kentucky, Mississippi, and all the way into Indiana. So yeah, and right in the south does show Wednesday tomorrow those storms in Louisiana there, potential that tornado wind threat there in Louisiana. This goes shows more Mississippi too later tomorrow, and does form a line of storms Louisiana, Mississippi later tomorrow evening. So be aware there. And the herd does have this front into Washington and Oregon there by tonight, tomorrow morning, but has some stronger storms and more heavy rain in Northern California and Oregon during Wednesday tomorrow, and some lines of gusty storms later in the coast after that. So be aware there. And now Kronos does show here that doesn't have precipitation here, weird, but here it has uh, rain accumulation. So until the 14th, the her has he barely has any accumulation that there in Texas, like northern Texas into Kansas from that front, more Minnesota and Iowa, but it really has more Louisiana, some areas there, close to some 2 inches. Southeasternmost Louisiana, some 2.5 inches or something, even 3 inches. Shows more from the storm central western Louisiana to Mississippi and Alabama, close to 3 inches, and more in Tennessee, especially to Kentucky, some more rain, so be aware. And now if I put this until next Saturday the 16th, the European model has more throughout like North Carolina, some 2 to 3 inches in some areas, more for the eastern US, northern US, and kind of the plains there. So be aware. Showing more near the Florida Panhandle too, 2 inches, some in Oklahoma, but showing a lot in the northwest, some 4 inches there, almost 5 inches in Washington, nearly 5 inches, 5.5 inches, some parts of Oregon. So be aware. The GFS a little bit less, but a similar thing. The icon has a tiny bit less, but very similar in Washington there. And yeah, so be aware in those areas. The her for the winds does have some stronger winds. The Rockies today, parts of Colorado especially, and New Mexico today and tonight does have like some 25 to 40 mile per gust, even 47, and arriving the northwest there does have like Wednesday tomorrow, so close to like 58 to 60 mile per gust, northern Washington, more throughout Oregon, some areas. So be aware of the strong gusts. This goes through and there Wednesday, and shows it spreading out through like many areas, northern California, close to 64 mile per gust, the coast of California too, some gustier conditions, interior Oregon, and those areas there. So this is Wednesday. This goes, the hurricane has way stronger winds, like in the Sierra Nevada, in Nevada choosing 61 mile per gust, Northern California, Southern Idaho, and Oregon has stronger gusts, especially Southern Oregon there has more about central western Montana into central Idaho, some stronger gusts, especially northeastern Oregon there, and into northern Montana there, like northern Montana, southern Alberta, some stronger gusts in the mountains. And then later this goes and still shows by early on Thursday, southern Montana, some high winds there. So be careful in those areas. And before that, does show like some stronger winds in Kansas Wednesday tomorrow because of that front. This goes shows like more through Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, some stronger gusts, and then like in the Appalachians too, Wednesday, especially Thursday, central Tennessee, some 57 mile per gust, West Virginia, and Alabama, some higher gusts still on Thursday night. So be aware there. And the European model has a similar thing too. In the Appalachians, those higher gusts, and across the northwest, especially northern California and Oregon, and Montana, those other areas. So be careful there. And here still shows those cold temperatures in the northwest and those relatively hot temperatures in southern Florida and Texas during the day. So some colder temperatures than northeast too. Tonight until Wednesday shows much colder across the Rockies, especially Utah and Colorado, some 20s, and like Montana too, in many areas of the west, and across the northeast, some low 20s there too. So be aware there, some colder temperatures, night and early morning, and yeah, shows during the day tomorrow just cold across the mountains of the west and northern Maine, still cold, and some May is in the extreme south. The show the other night from like Wednesday to Thursday morning, um, some 20s to northeast, those purple shares could be like 15 Fahrenheit, 14, 12 Fahrenheit, especially northern New York, they're close to 15 or less Fahrenheit, so 19, 25, 30 Fahrenheit there, and very cold across the west, still those 20s and those teens, the very high elevations. So be aware, Thursday afternoon, still mildish to coldish in the northeast and cold in the high elevations of the west, but still kind of hot in the south. And then Friday morning does show still some 20s the northeast and more 20s there, and 30 is across the west in the northern plains, and 30 is in 20s. Very cold in the Sierra Nevada and some parts of California, and some areas there. So be aware. The 48-hour snowfall until Thursday shows more snow like Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah, but especially close to 20 to 30 inches in northern Washington. There are some yellow spots in northern Washington, could be even close to 4 inches of snow. Shows more mountains there, some 20, 30 inches more for northern California. So be aware in those areas. Potentially more than 40 to 50 inches in northern Washington there. Some high peaks, more northern northern Nevada, and Montana there. So be aware, and always be aware like of frost and stuff during very cold days. And the 24 max wind gusts from their forecast here until Wednesday and midday shows some higher 50, close to 50, 60 mile per hour gusts in Northern California. The Sierra Nevada across Washington and Oregon shows windier, windier across the plains too, and the Rockies there in some areas. So be aware. And does show here like they have some winter weather advisories across Utah, northern Colorado, Wyoming, but they have some frost advisories and freeze warnings in Virginia there. So be aware, some red flag warnings in the northeast, wind advisories across North, South Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, parts of California, Nevada, and some wind warnings in Washington and Oregon, and some wind advisories there too. Winter storm warnings in northern Washington, and some winter storm watch in the Sierra Nevada there, California. Some heavy freezing spray in Alaska, and more stuff there. So be aware, but this changes all the time. And in Canada, they do have in British Columbia wind and rainfall warnings, a bunch of wind and rainfall warnings, southern British Columbia. So be aware, wind. They have here some information, strong winds and rainfall in those areas. So be careful. Some rain, heavy at times expected. British Columbia, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Some rainfall warnings there. So a long episode of rain, heavy at times expected. The Avalon Peninsula and some other areas. Quebec, a wind warning in Raglan Lake. So be careful there. This link is on the description too, for you to check more warnings. So be aware. There shows some mixed precipitation across the northwest today. The heavy snow in Washington and the northeast, some mixed precipitation. Tomorrow, still some heavy snow, some mountains of the northwest, and some storms to the south. And day 3, similar thing. And does show freezing rain possible in parts of the Appalachians, New York, Pennsylvania, and northern Maine into New Brunswick. Shows some freezing rain possible on day 3 for Thursday. So be aware. We'll check here like snow and ice. So does show this is the ice probability for Thursday. They do have a little bit of ice probability freezing rain in the Appalachians, West Virginia there, and a finger or two in Ontario. And then Friday, they have some slightly bigger probabilities, close to like 40% freezing rain probabilities, West Virginia, and all the way into Pennsylvania. Later on Friday, spreads a little bit into New York, some freezing rain probabilities, and gets very high in northern Maine into New Brunswick and eastern Quebec there on like very late on Friday. So be aware, stuff for two near Alberta and Saskatchewan. And yeah, so be aware the freezing rain potential, the snowfall potential does show those very high values across northern Washington, southern British Columbia, and the mountains there. Shows still in Colorado, some Utah, Wyoming, Montana. Today until Wednesday. Some there in eastern Quebec and New Brunswick, and a finger or two in Maine. And then I'll put this like Thursday. Does show still the west is getting like the heavy snow, especially like southern British Columbia, northern Washington, northern Idaho, and even part or two of Alberta in the mountains. Shows in Colorado, northern California, still finger two. Later on Thursday, a similar thing. Friday already still shows very heavy across the northwest, and then later on Friday more to the Sierra Nevada, some areas. So be aware there. And here, like, let's see, there's the winter storm severity index, day 1 through 3. This is until like Thursday, I think, until Friday, because Tuesday is day 1, so until Thursday and Friday. Shows more, there's some areas of majors, some mountains of northern California, and even some extreme impacts, some very high elevations of Washington due to the snowfall amount in northern Washington and many areas there. So be aware, some other parts of the Rockies as well. And yeah, be aware, this is mainly due to snowfall amount, but there can be some other factors too. So be aware. And the hazards does show like day 3 through 7, so some heavy rain and some wind there, and day 8 through 14, a similar thing, some heavy snow, wind, and like uh, much below normal temperatures, a slight risk. So be aware in those areas. Now let's see here. Uh, the wind shows very strong uh, British Columbia later tonight, especially some 89 km per hour gusts. Some stronger winds southern Alberta, like I showed you there. This ghost still shows a gust wind or two near the coast, and yeah, shows maybe the next bigger system on November 17th or something, but it depends on the model too. There's like here the European shows more systems southern Alaska, the Aleutian Islands, some high gusts on like the 14th, the 15th, and even after that, and shows like this gusty wind in northern Quebec there, shows very gusty in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, some 98, 93 km per gust, 77 km per gusts. So be aware, this is Wednesday the 13th, shows more Thursdays, some stronger gusts still, maybe a thing or two on Friday and Saturday still, and even after that shows a small system on Sunday. So be aware in those areas. The snowfall accumulation does show until Sunday the 17th, a lot across the northwest there, southwestern Canada, especially British Columbia shows a lot, southern Alaska shows more too, southeastern Alaska, especially northern Washington shows a lot, and let's see, shows some in Nova Scotia, the New Brunswick, and parts of the Avalon Peninsula, and Newfoundland shows more in northern Quebec and Labrador, shows some in southern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba, more snow in Nunavut, northwestern territories, northwestern Quebec shows some too, and shows a finger two in West Virginia, and maybe like New Mexico, a finger two in the Sierra Nevada there of California. They already have in the next 5 days some 3 inches of snow, and even more depends on the model. There's like here the icon has like 2 inches or something, the GFS 2 to like 6 7 inches next 5 days, and the GFS also northern Quebec more, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, some areas there, even central Saskatchewan, Ontario, Manitoba, some snow. North Dakota shows a little bit, and more across the northwest there. So be aware in those areas. Still very cold with those temperatures. There are some breaks in the middle, a little bit less cold, but they're still very cold, like Quebec and Labrador, especially like Yukon and Alaska, very cold, and northwestern territory, some areas, and let's play this along. Shows more cold in the west, much of the west, those negative temperatures later this week, more in Quebec and Ontario, and yeah, so be aware of the cold and everything. Some parts of Alaska all the way to minus 36 degrees Celsius, all to minus 32 degrees Fahrenheit. That's very cold. So yeah, be aware. And also the wind chills, they might feel colder than that. So this mainly it. Be aware. We're also monitoring the hurricane stuff in the Gulf. This is the European model curving something towards Florida. So we'll talk a lot about that in the tropical update. So if you're watching from there, stay tuned to